Okay. So just to give a quick synopsis. This is based on what Brother Batin shared with us as a musician and a Dianetics auditor. When you deal with a musical note, there's the note that you hear. And like say, for example, remember when the minister spoke about the A-tone?
Yes.
440 vibrations per second?
Yes.
Okay. So when you hear that, you hear in the A-tone or the A note. That's considered to be the fundamental. That A-tone that you hear is also called the first harmonic. Okay. And the way the music that you hear the musical note, and there can be, I mean, many harmonics. But the way the harmonic works is if you have a calculator, you can do this with a calculator. But a harmonic is considered to be an integer interval, meaning the A tone is 440. But if you go to the very first, I think it's the first note, it's 550. Does anyone have a calculator handy real quick?
I do. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so start at, I think, okay, so start at the number 55.
Okay, let me pull it up. Calculator. Okay, start at the number.
Okay, so
50.
you start at 55. Okay. Now,
Okay.
now add 55 to that, and what do you get?
110, right? 110.
Okay. Now add 55 to that,
Uh-huh.
and you get what?
And you get 165.
Add 55 to that.
110.
No, you got it. No, add 55.
Okay, I must have pressed subtract.
Yeah.
Okay, add 55. That's one. Oh, okay, 165 plus 55, 220.
Okay, now add 55 to that.
275.
Add 55 again.
330.
Add 55 again.
385.
And now add 55 one more time.
440.
Okay. All those steps are integer intervals that will lead you to 440, right?
Yes, sir.
All of those numbers represent notes. Those are the harmonics of that fundamental. So if you were to take those notes, they're measured in what's called hertz. All those represent notes on a musical scale. Okay, so when you hear the 440, you're hearing all those other notes are being played at the same time, but you can't hear them. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I say that to say this: when the minister speaks, the minister's words is like the fundamental. Okay. Or we can look at it as the first harmonic. That means there's other information in what he's saying that individuals may not hear at first. But based on the difference, because each one of us are at a different frequency of thinking, correct?
Yes, sir.
So based on our frequency, we're all going to hear something different. It's still going to be true, but we can trace it back to something that the minister said, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can sit and watch a clip of the minister, and I might show that same clip that we showed last night before we end the meeting, just to kind of give some stable datum to it. If we watch that clip, I think it might be 3 minutes, but if we all explain what we heard, we would all explain something different, correct?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Now, why did I take that whole roundabout way to say this? The minister's words were, in the video, we watched this many times, he says, in order to be in a laboring position, you have to be clear. Okay, you have to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take that statement that he said, and then you look at the 4 valid therapies, okay, and the 4 valid therapies are what?
Auditing, education, change of environment, and control or manipulation of mess.
Sister Tina gets the gold star. Exactly. Those are the 4 ways. So in order to go clear, you have to go through at least one of those 4 routes, correct?
Yes, sir.
To me, that would mean that in the future, in order to be in a leadership position, you would have to take one of those 4 routes. Now, Brother Remy made a real interesting statement last night when he was talking about people that, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm paraphrasing it. When people have issues between 2 different schools of thought, do you remember when he said it shows that they really don't understand what they think they already have?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you take all this information and kind of put it together, this part is my opinion. And I'm not saying this from the standpoint of an individual that has mastered the supreme wisdom, because I have not. But to me, to be in opposition to learning something new after being shown what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said on page 90 of Message to the Black Man, after showing the clip of what the minister has said with regards to education, to me, it goes to show that there may be those of us that have been in the nation for many, many, many years, but we are not up to date on our studying. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
We may have studied something 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I would almost bet my last dollar, if you take 100 believers and put them in a room, and let's say these believers had the last name Muhammad. And if the question is asked, in order to keep your Muhammad, you have to recite again your student enrollment in actual fact. The question could be, how many of us would lose our Muhammad? Because some individuals in the nation may have recited their student enrollment actual facts to get into the nation, but have never gone back over the student enrollment actual facts. If you ask the average believer, what is lost found Muslim lesson number 1, question number 1? We can go through all of it. All of us have fallen short. If the Savior were to ask us our lesson number 1 right now, I can't speak for you, but I know I would not be able to recite all of Lost Found Muslim lesson number 1 by heart. Okay. So I say all that to say that the minister's decision, again, this is my humble opinion, to have us study the text, and I'm going based on Surah number 2, where it talks about the Kaaba as the spiritual center. It says that the changing of the Qibla was a trial and a test for the believers to see who was really with the prophet and who was just lip professing. That's just my opinion. It reveals that some of us have the lessons and we're not even studying. We're relying on the minister. And if you go, and Sister Angela, I think, will be able to bear witness on this. If you go to the very first, the beginning of Closing the Gap, it talks about how the minister, he likes, and I'm putting it in my own words, we applaud the minister, but we know the minister is not teaching for applause, but the minister really wants to see us go forward and perhaps even surpass him. He's not caught up on us applauding. Go ahead, minister, teach, teach, teach. He wants us to be able to do the same thing. Like in the Bible, it was the disciples in the absence of the teacher that began to do the work, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you look at the wise man that went on the far journey, before he left, he gave one individual 5 talents, he gave one 3 talent, he gave one talent. And while he was gone, the one who had 5 doubled it to 10. The one who had 3 added on and produced 5. And then there was the one who had 1 talent and buried it. The minister has given all of us talents. He has given us the teachings. We're supposed to be either multiplying it or adding on to it. But if we're not doing either one of those things, that means we're taking the teaching and we're burying it. The teaching is like the water. You know, in the Holy Quran where it says you have the different fruits and they have different colors, but
Yes.
they're all watered with the same water.
Yes.
Okay, well, the teaching, the minister is giving us spiritual water, and all of us are different fruits, different hues, different flavors, different textures. All of us are supposed to be growing and being fruit for those that have not received nourishment yet. And we all come with different flavors and all those different things. I'm using that parable as an example. The minister has given us everything we're supposed to have, and we are supposed to take what he has given us and multiply it and make it better. We are supposed to look into his words and find the harmonics. His words are not just superficial, say it one time and you get it. You go back and watch the minister's lectures and you're like, man, I didn't catch that the first time. And every time you go back to the beginning and go over it again, what are you going to do? You're going to pick up additional data, right?
That's right.
So when people are opposing the minister's decision, to me, in my humble opinion, it just shows that we're not studying what we already have, because then we would see, and it goes back to the minister's video, and I'll show that. It just shows that we're not studying. We're trying to live off of the work of the minister, and the minister's work is not going to save us in that way. His job is to give us the same information he received, but we are responsible for saving ourselves. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. We can't get in the hereafter off the minister's work. He's done, in our humble opinion, he's done what he was supposed to do. Now he gets his crown because of his sacrifice. We can't get to the gate of the hereafter and say, I was with the minister. It don't work that way. Anyway.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Brother Wadu.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, family, to everyone else that has joined. As you were saying, all that you shared with us, it made me think about when Brother Eric first was speaking on the technology. He was looking for a word that the minister had used, and the word finally came that he was able to quote the minister saying he had found a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And a tool, another word for tool, is instrument.
Mm-hmm.
An instrument that helps you do some activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you were just talking about the harmonics and an instrument, and this being the technology being a tool, that possibly it is another device that the minister opened up to us for those who could not handle the gradient of maybe self-improvement. And so here's another tool that strikes upon that 440, but from a different level or integer of that 440 that you were talking about earlier. So it still has harmony and the harmonics and resonance, but it's for those that can feel themselves within that particular tool. I'm thinking now, like you in working construction, you have the carpenters, you have the plumbers, you have the electricians. They're all construction workers, but some feel more adept in their particular lane of construction. The carpenter doesn't do the electrical work. The electrician doesn't do the plumbing work and so on. So I was just thinking of that as in conjunction with the word tool, instrument, and harmonics.
That's a good point, Brother Wadu. Let's hit it from this angle as well. When you're working with the students that you're working with in the medical field, is there any special type of a program they have to use maybe on their own personal computers to get through the course that you're teaching?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they have a program. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what does that program allow them to do on their computer? Like what is the program for? What does it do?
So there are a few different programs geared towards helping students identify. They get these what I would call virtual patients
Okay.
vignettes that give a description of a patient scenario and how we should respond in that scenario as the physician. And so there are different platforms that allow them to look at these vignettes. Some platforms are more detailed.
Okay.
Other platforms have more visual graphics and charts available to them.
Okay.
And so there are different gradients of those platforms that students can choose from.
Okay, good. We're going down the right road then. Now, I'm going to assume that when they're pulling up the data to do a like a physical assessment or a diagnosis, do they have to do that within a certain span of time? They got like a time factor that they have to make that assessment?
Absolutely.
Okay. So on the average, what is the time factor involved in them making their assessment?
Typically, based on the total number that they have to go through, they have about a minute and a half to 70 some odd seconds, 72, 75 seconds.
Okay. So let's make it an even number. Let's say they have 90 seconds to make an assessment, right?
Yes, sir.
So now, what would happen if you noticed that, let's say you have 10 students going through this right now, and what if you notice that they all have the same program, but none of them were making the time, none of them are passing the time trial, or let's say some were passing the time trial and perhaps some of them were not. Some are passing the time trial, some are not. What could be some of the problems or some of the reasons why some individuals are not making the time trial versus those that are making the time trial? What are some of the possible reasons why? And let's say all these students are the brightest students. What could be one specific reason why those that are not making the time trial are missing it? What's a possible problem?
Some misidentify the features or dynamics within the vignette, or
Okay.
they follow certain features in the vignette down the wrong road, because features have overlap between different disorders. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you identify a certain feature and think that that's all you need is that singular feature, but that feature could be the red herring that takes you down a pathway of thought that is not consistent with the overall dynamics of the vignette.
Okay, but what if, and I'm going somewhere with this, but what if they get the answer 100% correct, but they were not able to do it in the 90 seconds? What is one
Okay.
possible thing that could be wrong? Because obviously there's nothing wrong with them. They got the answer right. They didn't do it in the right amount of time. Where could a problem be?
Mm, mm.
So I'm gonna pose a question. Is there a possibility that there's a problem with regards to the computer that they're using? In other words, if their computer, if the processor is not up to date, or if it's an older computer, is it possible that the problem could not be the student, but the problem can be the computer?
It's possible.
Do you see that, Brother Wadu?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, let's say we identify the problem is not the student, but the problem is in the computer. So now let's say we either find a way to clean out their computer of all the viruses and the malware and get the processor moving back up to speed, or we can get them a faster moving computer and then allow them to take the test again, and they get 100% and they do it within the prescribed amount of time. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, sir.
So we identified the problem is not the student. The problem is not the information that's being presented. The problem is in the computer and the processing speed, right?
Yes, sir.
So we use the viruses and the malware as a tool to allow us to accomplish what we need to accomplish within the prescribed amount of time, correct?
Brother Luke, no?
Yes, ma'am.
As well as the processor,
Mhm.
could it also be, along with the computer, the method of computation? The methods that are used are outdated or not up to date, or are slower methods, and that's what's slowing the student down.
Okay, yeah.
They still come up with the right answer.
Mhm.
Because, you know, I think we've examined that in some of the the Wednesday classes that focus more on the mathematical
Mhm.
theology.
Mhm.
And we looked at some of the methods that we're given, that the students use.
Mhm.
And then we were able to find other methods where you can arrive at the answer for long division or
Mhm.
whatever part of math it was, at a much faster pace, rate of, you know.
Yes, ma'am. It could be, and that would make perfect sense. But for this particular incident, Brother Wadu is teaching everyone the same method. And the point I'm trying to get
Okay,
to,
I get it. Yes, sir.
no,
Okay.
that's fine. But no, that's legitimate. That's legitimate, because if you try to solve equations using the math that we all group on, and then you try to use this common core stuff, you're not going to do it in the same amount of time. That's a legitimate differentiation there. But the point I'm trying to make is the problem is not with the student, but the problem is with the computer. And you have something you can use as a tool to clean up what's actually slowing the processor down so that they can do the work in the prescribed amount of time. That's what the tech is with relationship to our supreme wisdom. Our supreme wisdom, if we speak in the language of computers, the supreme wisdom lessons are like programs that we're supposed to download into our processor. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And every time, like when you look at how Mother Tynetta would go through the whole supreme wisdom every week, that's like every week you're receiving a new update, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're receiving a new update. You have to turn your computers off and turn your phones off so that the systems can update, and then you notice that you have new features on your phone, right? New features on your computer. If we had that same mentality with our lessons, then every time we complete our lessons, we're going to get a new update. Because why? We're going to learn another harmonic. We're going to go deeper in. So the supreme wisdom is that's a fundamental given to us by the Savior, but there's an infinite level of harmonics. And every time we go over the lessons, every time we recite the lessons, every time we go to the beginning, go over it again and pick up the additional data, what are we doing? We're updating our system. But the problem is, either we're going through the lessons and we're not picking up the information, or we're not studying. The problem is not in the lessons. The problem is something going on in the student. There's some viruses or some malware that's in the mind of the student that's not allowing them to update through the supreme wisdom. Would that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So the tech is being used as a tool to remove our mental, emotional, and spiritual viruses and malware. Because how do viruses and malware work? Sometimes they take files and put them someplace else. Every time you load a program into your computer, and then you erase that, when you erase something from your computer, it leaves a gap on your hard drive. And so what happens when you have a lot of gaps all over your hard drive, when your computer has to read a file, the file might be scattered in many different places because it's not all collected into one spot. It has to go and avoid all these gaps. And what that does, that's exactly. Sounds like the genetic entity. So it takes time. It has to pinpoint fragmented files all over the computer. And that's what we see yes, ma'am. See, that's like mine, fragmented. And that's what causes, from our perception, the processor is slowing down. It's trying to find, so when you defrag the computer, what you're doing is you're taking and you're closing the gaps on your hard drive. You're taking all the relevant data and you're putting it all together in an organized fashion. And when there's no gaps on the hard drive, your computer doesn't have to read and scattered all that fragmented information. It's all organized. The tech does for the brain or the mind what defragmentation does to a hard drive. It allows us to get rid of those gaps in our memory. And now we can refile them in standard memory. We know exactly where things are in our thoughts. All the files are together. Everything is together. So what happens? Our mind doesn't need all this time to figure things out. If the average person mind travels 24 billion miles per second, the average person, if you look at the statistics based on the percentages, the average person would fall into the realm of the 85%, would it not?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you take the three groups, you take the 10%, 85%, and 5%. How do you figure out an average? You add those three and divide by 3, right? If you add 10,
Right.
85%, and 5%, and divide by 3, you should get 33%, right? And that's just above freezing. If you look at
Yes.
it, okay. So if the average person's mind travels 24 billion miles per second, then that would tell me that the mind of the 5% would be traveling faster than 24 billion miles per second.
10% too.
Okay, and the 10%. So you take all these things, you take all the data from our lessons and you kind of put it together, and then you kind of see that one of the reasons why we're not flowing in the way that we should be, because we're not doing the study the way Brother Jabril would describe it. We're not doing the reading the way Mother Tynetta. We're not studying the way the minister has given us instructions to study. We're not doing it. You can't blame it on the teachings. The tech is just a tool for us to remove the barriers to allow us to study what we already have. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. The tech is a tool to remove the mental and spiritual and emotional viruses and malware to allow our minds to travel at the speed it needs. How fast does the minister's mind travel? It wouldn't be 24 billion miles per second
Yes.
because he's not average.
Right.
Okay. So these are the things we got to look at. We got to stop saying, not we, but just generally speaking, we shouldn't get so scared about a tech that comes from a person that's Caucasian when hell, the poison book we were given, the Bible was given to us by King James. No one had any problem studying the Bible. And that book was rewritten. Shakespeare was one of the people whose name is in the book. So here you got a book that was written was coded so that we couldn't study it by King James, Caucasian, but yet we have no problem reading that one. And when we go to colleges, Brother Wadu, how many medical textbooks have you come across that were written by Black men or Black women?
Zero.
Okay.
Absolutely
All right.
zero.
So does that mean that your standing as a doctor is illegitimate because because you're using books written by Caucasian people? No. We got to grow up. We got to stop being spiritually immature and recognize truth wherever we find it, regardless of the color of the person who presents it. Go ahead, Sister Angela, because I'll ramble on about this all day long.
Praise be to Allah. Assalamu alaikum. I have to say
Nah.
that. Um, this is something I've been talking about maybe for about 3 weeks now. And it's been coming to me in different flashes, like I said, sitting in different groups of people that utilize different tools. I want to really key in on that because I have to say I've come and found a common thread in every group. Every group may have found something that spoke to their soul.
Mm-hmm.
And every group think that's the only route to take, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Like the harmonics that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were talking, I went back to a conversation. The very first conversation I had with Brother Jabril, may Allah be pleased with him. And it was on the phone, and I happened to be in Maine, in the state of Maine, and I probably was one of the 10 Black people there. And I just find that so funny because when we ran into other Black people, everybody embraced each other like, wow, you're the only Black people I seen.
Everyone's related now.
Right. And what he did on that phone was very similar and more advanced than a straight lie.
Mm-hmm.
Now I look into that conversation. Not only did he ring an A tone in my mind, he put some suggestions there also that apparently he either heard about some things I've done or was told some things I've done or just inspired by Allah, which leads me to this other portion. I always refer to, and I always forget to do this, and inshallah, I'm going to do it right now when I finish talking, to get to this portion of book 1, where L. Ron Hubbard talks about faith and how faith can supersede engrams. And I started thinking about faith as an exchange and very, careful not to call it a tool, but then again, it's almost like currency. If we really understand what faith can do for us, like move mountains, and sometimes the mountains are the engrams.
Mm-hmm.
So while you were speaking, this particular tool, Dianetics, is a mercy I see from Allah for those of us that cannot overcome the past.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, and some of us are, I sit in circles where they know the lessons by heart, can quote them verbatim, can quote the Bible, Holy Quran, can quote English C lesson number 1, Lost and Found Muslim lesson number 1. They can quote everything, but the falling away of self is the biggest problem. And this tool in particular, next to faith, because I have to put faith first, because when I went into my very first auditing session, because of my delicate circumstances coming into the ranks, a lot of my past I made a lot of peace. So I wanted to scream and run like everybody else doing, but what was for me was for me. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
What was for me was for me. And I come to realize later on how come it wasn't surfacing for me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that I didn't come in. I tell people, sorry for the noise. I tell people that when I came to the mosque as a teenager, I came in the ambulance because that's how tormented my life was at the time.
Mhm.
At 17 and 18, I could tell stories that are like horror stories from domestic life and watching domestic abuse and just about anything you can name. I've been through it already. So,
Mhm.
and Allah does what He will for a reason. I just see, for me, looking at some of us are blessed to see the value of whatever tool Allah give us. However, another tool that is going to be used is the winds, and some of us going to unfortunately have to get whipped by the winds in order to get into shape.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am. It reminds me of let's see if I can find it real quick. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Peggy.
Walaikum salam, sir, and assalamu alaikum, family.
Wa alaikum salam.
It reminds me of, let me see. That's it right here. Okay. Now, I actually shared this ayat with Brother Batin. May Allah be pleased with him, a couple years ago. I was word clearing this ayat. And so it's Surah 57, ayat number 13. And it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, on the day when the hypocrites, men and women, will say to those who believe, wait for us, that we may borrow from your light, it will be said, turn back and seek a light. Then a wall with a door in it will be raised between them. Within it shall be mercy, and outside of it chastisement. I want to use this ayat, but I don't want to use this in the sense of looking at the believers as hypocrites. That's not my intention. But I want to look at this ayat from this perspective, if I could. There are those of us that are studying the text, and then there are those who are not. Sister Angela, you might be able to answer this because of the amount of auditing that you do. Have you ever come across an individual who told you at one time they did not have a desire to study the tech, but then a situation occurred and they either went to you or went to someone to use the tech and it changed their mind? Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely.
Okay, now with that in mind, I'm going to assume that you're not the only auditor in the country that has experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at this ayat, we'll say to those who believe. So let's say there'll be some believers who did not study the text. And they say to those who have, wait for us that we may borrow from your light.
Mm.
Okay, so I don't want to do the study, but I want to get information from you with the hopes that the fact that your tone level has increased, perhaps I can get the same response of my mind increasing, but I'm not going to put forth the effort of studying. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, sir. In and out the mosque. Yes, sir.
Okay, in and out the mosque. Okay, so it said, wait for us that we may borrow from your light, because the word light, and let me see the Arabic here. If it is okay, nur. So the Arabic, if you look on the right, if you have your Holy Quran open, the word for light is nur, and the word nur also means enlightenment. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes people want to borrow from our light or borrow from each other's light, but they don't want to put forth the effort of study. Because to study takes time and discipline, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then it says, it will be said, turn back and seek a light, meaning you need to go and study. You can't just borrow from light from someone else. You got to put forth the effort of doing the study. Then it says, a wall with a door in it will be raised between them. Now, this is just my opinion. The way I saw this was that when they turn back, a wall is raised up, dividing them from the other group, but there's still a door in it. Meaning, you got to go back and study. But now that you're going back and studying, at least if you want to come back now, there's a door. You're welcome. but you gotta put forth the effort of studying.
Mm-hmm.
And the word door in Arabic is batinuhu, I think it is. And I shared that. I said, Brother Batin, you're like the door, because the word door and batin is the same thing.
Praise be to Allah.
Individuals have to study. We're trying to get case gain, but we're trying to circumvent the four therapies. We don't want to do processing. We don't want to be educated. We don't want to change our environment, and we're not trying to make the attempt to control mess. How can you go, if there's only 4 valid therapies, you have to go through at least one of those avenues, correct? If you're going into New York and you're going through the Lincoln Tunnel, if there's only 4 lanes open, and you say, no, I want to get to New York, I don't want to go through I don't want to go through either one of those lanes. Can you get to New York?
Unless you can swim.
Unless you can swim. You might have to swim 9,000 miles, but
Right.
there's only 4 lanes, and you don't want to go through those lanes, then you can't get to where you have to go, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It just, to me, it makes sense. When the stuff really hits the fan, as Sister Angela has experienced, when the stuff really hits the fan, at least in a person's mind, they say, you know what? Even though I denied it, now it's time. Because I think the minister has said, even someone who is an atheist, if a plane starts rocking, they say, oh God, wait a minute. Thought you were an atheist. Have you heard the minister teach on that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So even individuals that don't want nothing to do with the tech, when as they say, when the fit hits the shan, let's see. Okay. When the fit hits the shan, they're going to remember individuals in their circle that have studied the tech and realize I got to go and get some processing because I just had a loss in my family. My husband just left. My wife just left. I just lost my job. All these things are going to take place. But in our memory, we're going to say, wait a minute. Now I got to go find someone who has the tech. So some of us have to go through the hell to kind of get us pointed. I think you used the word, they got to let the winds blow on them a little bit. Was that Sister Angela that said that? Or Sister Ani?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. It's only a matter of time. So as those that are training in this, we have to just keep training, because I hate to say it, and I hope I'm wrong, but if the situation happened in the 70s with the departure of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it caused the believers to go through the mental anguish that they went through, can we say that is it possible that cannot happen again, or is it possible that will happen again? The difference this time is there's individuals in place that could possibly assist the believer and the non-believer in the absence of the minister to do the work. So when the minister returns, we are all still present. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What's that, Sister Peggy?
No, I didn't. Oh, yeah, I hadn't seen. I just said yes, sir. I guess I just shook my head. Yes.
Oh no, accept your apology.
Oh no, yes. I was saying, please accept my apology for being late.
Oh no, you don't apologize.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak to a friend who wanted to know more about the nation and how to eat to live. So I said, well, I better not leave. I better just go ahead and finish this up.
No,
and,
you got your mission just like we got ours, sister. No need to apologize.
No, she got a book and a newspaper and
Well, then you did exactly what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
Anyway, I got case gained just from hearing that, Sister Peggy. Thank you. Okay, so what are we going to talk about tonight? As always, I wake up in the morning and I have a thought in my mind, and I take that as an assignment. But sometimes, yes, who's about to say something?
Brother Ahmad Majid, he had his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Ahmad.
Pardon me. had started to have my dinner. You know, it's 4 o'clock on the West Coast. I had a question in terms of probably an offline question. In fact, I probably will follow up with you. But in terms of autism spectrum disorder, and we were talking about the genetic entity. Not that autism itself is the genetic entity, certainly not saying that. I'm learning about it, and it's interesting. The experiential challenges in terms of intellectual capabilities, and if you haven't heard the term neurodivergence, is really where I stop with it, not in a hard stop, pause, can't comprehend, but it's a rich space that I think would be valuable to have more exploration and conversation, especially in terms of where we were in the genetic entity conversation.
Okay.
Again, not making those like equal, but I'm leaning into it for some advocacy reasons in terms of Black youth and the diagnosis. So sharing it, one, to flag it and to give us language. Neurodivergence is the term, and I'll add it to the chat because I'm sure there are some things in technology that can support with that. And that's where I would like to find like alignment in terms of things we can provide. Thank you for the reminder, Sister Angela. You're excellent.
Praises be to Allah.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I already wrote that down, and I'm already interested. That is an assignment. I'm interested in that. I don't think I've heard the term neurodivergence, but I will say this: as you were talking about autism, it took me back to what Dr. Wesley spoke on in the mosque a couple of years ago. Do you remember he spoke about it was something called microtubules? Do you remember him using that term, microtubules?
If not him, I definitely am familiar with the term.
Okay. Well, Dr. Wesley gave a real good, he dropped a real good science on that in Mas Mariam, and the relationship to, I think it was damage to the microtubules and how it manifests as autism. And I think he might have been speaking about, I believe he was speaking about the vaccinations, but I'm not 100% sure. But that would be a good place to go to if you haven't already, to go back and revisit that. But neurodivergence, oh brother, I'm gonna be I gotta work tomorrow. So my downtime, brother, I'm gonna be all over this subject because it sounds interesting.
It's incredible. I'll send you some of the stuff I've been looking at too.
Yeah, brother, send me the info so I can study it up, and then inshallah you'll see it in a PowerPoint somewhere. So
Yes, sir. Give thanks. Thank you, brother.
oh, thank you, brother. Go ahead, Sister Peggy.
Thank you. In my studies, okay, I'm still in book one. And so I was reading about the location of the analytical mind is here in the frontal lobe. And then the reactive mind, L. Ron Hubbard said, is on the cells in the body. Okay, so, and then he was talking about that in the 1950s and probably even before. And not very many people were talking about that. Now, some people are talking about that all the time. So what I want to know more and more about it, or at least what they said in the world versus what he said, or maybe in combination with what he said. So I got that book, The Embodied Mind, and it's very good.
The Embodied Mind?
Yeah. It's written by Thomas Berni, MD, who's a psychiatrist, and he studies the mind. And in one of my presentations, I suggested that the MGT and FOI read read an article of what happens to a child's mind when the mother is under stress. When all of those stress chemicals and everything, and exactly what it does to different parts of the brain. But before he wrote this, he wrote a book about the secret life of a child. The secret life of an unborn child. And that was back in the 1980s and was really popular then. And now he's written several books, but this book is about the cells and where the and the memory and how cells carry the memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that, but it's like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in How to Eat to Live, speaking about fasting and the benefits of fasting, but not too many people accepted it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone is, and this is what's happening to L. Ron Hubbard. There probably weren't very many people in 1952 or before
Mm-hmm.
that entertained anything like that. And so now he's written this book and probably everybody's talking about it.
Well, that's one thing I'm seeing, Sister Peggy. I'm looking at individuals coming up with this information about the mind-body connection and the disease and the cells and whatnot. I'm like, but you're just plagiarizing what L. Ron Hubbard was talking about in the 50s. It's no different than all of a sudden everything is intermittent fasting, 1 meal a day. And so you're taking How to Eat to Live and you're putting it in your own fancy terminology and fancy language, but it's what we've been studying for decades. And now they're acting as though they're the author of this new fasting 1 meal a day fad. They just call it intermittent fasting. Just put a different name on it.
Yeah, so this book is really fascinating. It's called The Embodied Mind.
And what's the name of the author?
Thomas R. Birney, MD.
Okay. All right, another assignment.
Yeah.
Now, before we go forward, I want to share something with the believers. I think you might find this interesting. On your cell phones, I want you to pull up the following website. And this part, I'll let it record. It's called oceanofpdf.com. Pull that up on your cell phone real quick. Ocean of PDF should be all one word. Oceanofpdf.com. Does everyone have that come up on their phone?
Yep, free books.
Free books. Now, just for example, type in where it says search, type in a title or a subject of your interest. And then if you scroll down, it'll ask you if you want to download the PDF version. And then look at all the books with your subject. Look at all the books that come up. Are you seeing that?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what is it called again? Ocean of books?
Oceanofpdf.com.
Oceanofpdf.com. Okay, thank you.
And you can type in any subject you want, and a whole list of books will pop up on the screen. Let me know if you found that. You see it, Sister Angela?
Yes, sir, I'm on it.
Okay, and now when you press on a particular book, it takes about 5 to 10 seconds, and you can access and actually read that book on your cell phone.
I'm so glad you gave me this website. Thank you, sir.
I typed in, one day I sat there and typed in chest openings. And I was like a child on Christmas opening a whole bunch of gifts. I was like, ooh, look at all these books. Right now, my big thing is I'm going back to revisit different types of math. One particular subject is linear algebra. And when I pulled up all the books, I was like, oh my God, I'm in my heaven now. Oh, hallelujah. I don't know, it just popped in my head. I wanted to share that with the believers. So now you can, for the low price of free, but if you can send a donation we don't want to do anything for free. But now while you're sitting there waiting for the bus or waiting for the train, whatever, waiting for your flight, you're about to go to the islands to get some vacation or whatnot. Or if you just sit around on the bridge of the Enterprise, you can just pull up any book that you want and just read it right on your phone. Anyway, go ahead, Sister Angela. I see you got your hand up.
Oh man, I'm all typing in all these titles to see if they come up. Praise be to Allah for brother Ahmed. I had early on of being an auditor, I went by my friend's house, a girl that I grew up with. I think we known each other since I was maybe 6 and she was 5. and I went to see her grandmother because most of the family moved out of New Jersey. So I go and check on the family once in a while. And her grandmother was having an episode where she was seeing um, little creatures that lived on her feet.
Mm.
And she would talk to them and feed them, and and she could get violent at times if you were someone that she and they deemed should not be in her presence. So I went over there, and once you become an auditor, it's hard to take that hat off.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see her, and the visit was quite nice. And I told her, I started talking to her. So tell me about the little creatures that live on your foot. And she's talking about them. She's telling me everything. And she said, so I said, well, what makes you see them and I can't? And she starts laughing like crazy. Now, this woman was having a psychosis for months. After I get there, I get the full understanding of what's going on. And she says, I know. But I see him. I know nobody else can see him. But so she had a moment of a rational moment where the analytical mind made her belief seem very silly to her. And I'm sharing that because I've done some very unorthodox things with this tool, especially with the assist, the medical assist, and even a touch assist. Now, this is an auditor I did the touch assist on, or one of the first assists that I did. She became an auditor because she followed instructions, but she did not believe in auditing at all, because she's a psychiatrist, and so she hurt her ankle, and I gave her an assist. And this woman was floored about 5 minutes after that assist was ended, where she could move her foot, and she walked out of there better than she did. And last, like for Brother Ahmad, I take things sometimes. I think I got it from study guide number 1 and 2. And that gave me a demo kit. So sometimes when I get information that I feel is a little deeper than I'm used to chewing on, I use a demo kit for it. So I give everything its attribute that it's associated with, and it helps me understand it more, because I took neuro-linguistic programming, and just that name at first stopped me in my tracks. But once I put it into perspective, it was quite digestible. Put it that way.
So you spoke to her on her frequency, basically.
Yeah, that's how I got in the door. I got in the door, but it was like a Trojan horse, I got in the door, and the whole point of it is I had people curse me out. Once that rational thought hits and they say it, because you can hit a wall with them, they won't say it. They become very frustrated. They might quit, but then when you don't quit, they'll yield and they'll say it, because there's no other. They can't use any rational excuse, because now they're outside of the reactive mind. So they're actually trying to think of viable excuses. There's not. Once you got them on that level, forget it. It's only a matter of time where they come to their own understanding. And even when I first started in New York, I must say this, and this is why I really believe this tool helps us get past ourselves. I was floored with the amount of superstition and just unfounded beliefs in Muslims that I found out. Going to the Oregon, doing drills and doing sessions, I was floored. All the things we bringing with us, and no wonder we can't crack the lessons. We still don't want people to sweep our foot or spill some salt or break a mirror, or you know what I'm saying? We carrying all these valences. people in our family, and don't we realize it's slowing our processor down and causing a gap, as you said.
Yes, ma'am. Most definitely. We still carry a lot, especially you're from the South.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything before I proceed to the ayat? We're gonna do a little participatory work here. Okay. As I was studying, as the idea came to my mind, the thought was Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 8. What makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquake? But then the question that came to mind was, how does rain, hail, snow, and earthquake, how can we relate that to emotional states? In other words, how can we use this lesson to be a demo kit to represent the aberrated mind? So then I started the process. Okay, first I got to find the Arabic words. And then another thought came to mind was this, and I've noticed this in many parts of the Supreme Wisdom lessons by Allah's grace. And it starts with this premise. Can we say possibly, because we don't know 100% for sure, but just quite possibly, that the Savior's his primary language was Arabic? Can we say that? Okay, that would be a safe assumption.
Right.
Would it be safe to say that he thought in Arabic or he thinks in Arabic? Okay.
At least.
Now, the reason why I'm saying that is this. Is it possible that when he was giving this information to Sister Bernstein, correct? Who was writing the original lesson, yes?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that he was going from Arabic to English? Okay.
That is incredible.
Safe assumption, right?
Now,
What flavor, and when I say flavor, I'm coming from the language of quantum physics. Quarks have flavor and charm and things of that nature, and energy levels. What would happen if we took those same lessons, and if you notice, there are certain words that are capitalized, where it's like, why would that word be capitalized in the middle of a sentence? What happens to that lesson if we input the Arabic variation of that word? So for example, what if we look at the word rain, but we say, okay, what's the Arabic word for rain? What's the Arabic word for hail? What's the Arabic word for snow? What's the Arabic word for earthquake? And then if we look at those words in Arabic, and we look at not even the lesson itself, but just the question, because remember, Minister Farrakhan said what? Allah is a scientist who speaks in the language of formulae, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a formulae. A formulae is a collection of symbols, variables, coefficients, correct?
right.
And if you input data, then a formulae will take the number. I mean, think about it. If you put a number in, this is what's called a function in mathematics. For a function, when you input a number, the function transforms the number into the solution. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
If you input 7,926 into the formula for circumference, it gives you the output of 24,896 miles in circumference, correct? So
Yes,
now
sir.
you take that same concept and you look at one of the questions in our lessons. Look at it not as just a question, but look at it as a function. Look at it as an equation or a formulae. And then when you look at rain, hail, snow, earthquake, look at those as the inputs. Okay. Now, this would be a discussion for later on in the future. But in the level of calculus level 3, you have what's called multivariable calculus. Sounds complicated, but it's not. And all it is you have an equation that has more than one variable. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. So, Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 8. What makes rain, hail, snow, earthquake? Can the word rain, if we look in the Arabic, could that be translated into a mental state? Could
Yes.
be translated into a mental state?
All of them.
No, all of them. So then you look at that first question as an equation, and you look at rain, hail, snow, earthquake as a demo kit, as a demo. Because remember, demo kit in Scientology is equivalent to the parable that's found in the Holy Quran. The Arabic word for parable is mathala, M-A-T-H-A-L-A. And mathala means metaphor, allegory, proverb, adage, simile. But the word mathala also means to represent something by sketching, by painting, or to represent it graphically. And when you represent something graphically, you're using mathematics, correct?
Right.
So the word parable, everywhere you see word parable in the Holy Quran, you're talking about a demo kit. Okay. Parable in the Holy Quran is the equivalent of demo kit in Scientology. Talking about the same concept, we're just using two different words. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So now when you look at it from, excuse me, when you look at it from that standpoint, this whole lesson takes on a whole nother concept now, doesn't it? Now
Right.
how the mind operates. Okay. So the little things that happen during the day that trigger, that will trigger us in the tech, those are called restimulators, right? These little stimulators do what? They gather in a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect, right? And based on the different layers of our thinking and the temperature, it distills back in the form of drops of water or drops of ice, right? Which depends on how the temperature of that current and how heavy the mist was, yes?
Right.
Yes.
With me. Okay, now, that's a class for another time, because as I'm studying that, I come across, out of the blue, this other verse pops up. I don't know how I came across this verse. And as I'm looking at this verse, I couldn't even continue down the road of studying what I was studying. So I haven't completed that study yet. But I just want to share with the believers the ayat that came up coincidentally by design. Okay. So Surah 2, ayat 220. If you have your Holy Qurans, you can open up to that. This is going to be participatory. Okay, because I want to hear your feedback on this. We're going to take an ayat from the Holy Quran and we're going to look at it like a formula. Okay. And there's different parts of the verse in the Holy Quran. We're going to look at these certain words as placed input variables. So these are variables, we're going to input data. And then see if we can use this verse from the Holy Quran as a formula to allow us to increase our understanding of both the Holy Quran and the tech. And I think as we do this, some of us might go back on our time track and some data might come up. Y'all with me? Okay, I have a feeling that will happen. Now, if you look at the ayat, I want to start where it says, and they asked thee concerning the orphans. Okay, it starts out by saying on this world and the hereafter. But the main focus is, and they asked thee concerning the orphans. Say, to set right their affairs is good, and if you mix with them, they are your brethren. And Allah knows him who makes mischief from him who sets right. And if Allah pleased, he would have made matters difficult for you. Surely Allah is mighty wise. Okay, is everyone, do you have your Holy Quran handy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brother Lukman, can you repeat the ayat, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's Surah 2, ayat 220. And it just so happens, and I just caught this, 220 is an integer interval of 440. So we're talking about a harmonic of 440. I didn't see that before. That's just a little Mother Tinetta spirit right there. Okay. So so as I'm looking at this, I said, "Ooh!" As soon as I see certain ayats, I vibe with them. It's like, okay, there's a reason why I'm studying one thing and I'm shown this, and then as I'm studying this, in my mind, because I'm going through the study, I'm writing stuff down, but then the thought comes, study this as if you're studying your own condition. And as you see, if you can apply this to yourself, then the other believers might be able to apply it to themselves. Remember, the minister said this, Torchlight for America, page 48 to page 51. He says, put Allah at the center of your education and then study the subject as if you're studying yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, let me pose a question to us. What is an orphan?
A child whose parents, both mother and father, have departed.
Okay, anyone else?
A more broad definition might be a person without normal, quotes on that, normal supports.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, that pretty much sums it up. So can we say that an orphan could be either children that either their parents were absent due to some situation that took place that took their parents from them, or could we say on a mental or emotional level, a child that had parents that weren't available mentally, or their parents weren't available emotionally, or we could say their parents were abusive. So technically, they people were there, but they didn't have parents. If you understand what I'm saying, could we go down that road with that?
We could, and you know what, Brother Lukman, that would make all of us orphans.
Exactly. And I think the minister had taught on that once before, right? We were without a mother and a father until the coming of the Savior. I think he said something along those lines a while ago. Does anyone remember that?
I don't remember
It definitely
that.
sounds familiar for me.
Okay, it sounds
I can't
familiar.
place it.
I think he was speaking about, and again, this is, I'm trying to paraphrase it. I pray that I'm not putting words in the minister's mouth, but it was along the lines of a child being born without a father. When you're speaking about how they teach Jesus in the Bible or something along those lines, but how we didn't really have parents because of our condition growing up in this country. So when you look at the slave trader, the slave maker, and the slave owner, during the process of slave making, didn't we become orphans?
Yes, sir. I would say so.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
meaning physically, our parents were taken from us. We lost our land, our language, our culture, and our God. So we're orphans in this country. But then also our parents were present, but they couldn't teach us anything because of the conditions. So we were orphaned mentally. They couldn't show us emotional support because of our conditioning. So we were orphans emotionally, we're orphans mentally, we're orphans physically. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now when we do the word clearing, okay, the word for orphan is yatama. Yatama, Yatama. Now, understand this. Every letter in Arabic also has a mathematical value. Is everyone aware of that?
No, sir.
Okay, it's called the Arabic abjad, meaning every letter represents a number.
Okay.
So if you take the word, so here's another interesting thing that came out of this study. The scripture says you'll be lost in a land that's not theirs for how many years?
400.
And then there's another part of the Bible that says 450, correct? Have you ever seen 450?
I've never seen 450.
Okay, I got to find the actual facts on that because there's one verse that says 400. There's another verse I remember that says 450. And before we end this, I'll try to see if I can look that up as if someone else is speaking. Anyway, I'll cover that once I can get the actual facts on it. But anyway, the word yatama means to be bereaved, deprived, or isolated from one's parents. In other words, you can be in a house with your parents, but be isolated from them, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It says, it comes from the root word bereaving, which means to rob.
Mhm.
It means suffering death or loss of a loved one, in quotes, it says parents. But now, so if you look at the Arabic meaning of the word orphan, excuse me, some of us were robbed of our childhood. Some of us went through the loss of a parent, and some of us dealt with a loss of a parent on an intellectual level or on a mental level, correct?
Yes, sir.
So on varying degrees, we could say, on varying degrees, each one of us in our own individual way could satisfy the criteria of the Arabic definition of the word orphan, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, our lessons say, why does he fear now? Let me read the exact words. I don't want to miss any words. In English lesson number C1, it says, why does he fear now since he's a big man? So because the devil taught him to eat the wrong food, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But it also says why does he like the devil? Because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy. Now, what devil are we talking about?
When it says, why does he like the devil? Isn't that he likes the devil because the devil gives him nothing?
It says, well, it says he likes the devil because the devil gives him nothing. That's number 6. Number 7, why does he like the devil? Number 8, because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy.
Okay.
Why does he fear now since he's a big man? Because the devil taught him to eat the wrong food. That, to me, is a formula. Why? If you look at that from the perspective of our present time aberrated mind, the question becomes, well, let's look at this for a split second. Let's look at the science behind this. There's a doctor by the name of Dr. Gabor Mate. His videos on YouTube, videos are excellent to watch. His book, The Myth of Normal, excellent book to study. The science in there, not that he got his science from the tech. He has many, many years of experience. So I'm not taking anything from Dr. Gabor Mate, but his research and findings actually bears witness. It has ARC, it has its equivalent, has agreement with the tech. Okay. As a child, when we're in an environment that we have no control over, the child can't attack the parents, and the child can't just pack up and leave, correct? A small child has to endure that environment, whatever that environment is, correct?
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's like if I was saying something right now that you found appalling, I already know Sis Angela probably cussed me out. Individuals could just leave the Zoom meeting, right?
Right.
I'm just messing with you, Sis Angela.
Yes,
But really,
right.
you can either leave the Zoom meeting or you can speak your piece and come at me in a certain way, right? Everything's for real.
Right.
Okay, so you have those options. But a child growing up in a hostile environment, they can't leave the house and they can't go against the parent because the parent obviously will overpower them physically, and the child has no resources in which to leave the house. So a child has to survive a hostile environment by producing a mental environment inside themselves to remain in a hostile environment and to survive in it. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. In other words, a child has to make up an aberration in order to survive. Yes?
Yes,
Mhm.
sir.
Okay. The human body and the human mind has a way of coming up with survival mechanisms
Mhm.
to endure hostile environments because the body is designed on survive, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Coming from the medical standpoint, when a person smokes cigarettes for a prolonged period of time, the body normally breathes based on the partial carbon dioxide in the blood, correct? Am I correct on that, brother Wadud, Dr. Wadud? Your body breathes based on carbon dioxide, correct?
The respiratory centers, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So then what happens is over time, a person is constantly smoking cigarettes, you're producing a hostile environment. So the body is saying, well, this knucklehead won't stop smoking. So I have to find a way to survive. So what I have to do is I have to switch. And then the body actually has 3 respiratory centers in the medulla oblongata, but it has to switch now to what's called, it's the apnoistic, Dr. Wadud.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It switches. And then the body's like, okay, I can't breathe based on carbon dioxide because you always got carbon dioxide. Now I got to breathe based on oxygen. So now the breathing is not based on the elevated levels of carbon dioxide, it's based on the level of oxygen. So if the levels of oxygen increase, what does the brain tell the body, Dr. Wadu?
So I'm thinking in that state, you'll have to help with my education in the pulmonology. I'm not
Okay.
there.
Okay, I mean to put you on the spot, brother. And so you have these, just like the Panama Canal has 3 gates, you have 3 gates in the medulla oblongata that determine respiratory rates. So what happens is the way the body works, because it's trying to survive a hostile environment, it's not breathing based on carbon dioxide levels increase, because when we work out, carbon dioxide increases in the body, and that's why our respiratory rate goes up, okay? But if you're constantly smoking and you're constantly putting these chemicals in the body says, I can't operate under these circumstances. Let me switch and I'll breathe based on the levels of oxygen. So now, as oxygen levels decrease, the respiratory rate will increase. When oxygen levels increase to a certain level, the body will say, okay, I got sufficient amount of oxygen, now I can kind of slow down a little bit. But if the oxygen levels get too high, the body says, I don't need to breathe at all. And that's why people that with emphysema, you see them with the nasal cannula.
Mhm.
You give them too much oxygen, their body will stop breathing. Does that make sense? In other words, we have a way of adapting a hostile environment, but when we manifest that same behavior as an adult, it appears as mental derangement or mental disorder. Why? We're acting like a child. That's basically what we're doing when we're aberrated. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The behavior that we use to survive as a child, why does he act like a fool now? Why does Brother Lamont act like a fool now that he's a grown man? Because he was taught to eat the wrong thing when he was a child, meaning he was in an environment where he had to do these mental games to survive something as a child that he couldn't get away from and he couldn't retaliate against it. So he had to just sit there and endure it and survive it. But now, as an adult, it looks like Brother Luke Mom's crazy as hell. No, part of him is still stuck on the time track.
Absolutely.
That behavior back then, that food that he ate as a child, he's still eating it today. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right. So Brother Luke Mom is an orphan on a certain level.
Mm.
All of us have some orphan in us, correct?
Mhm.
Some way,
So
shape, form, and fashion, something happened during our childhood, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, where individuals that were supposed to be doing something either didn't do it or they did what they weren't supposed to do. That's where you get into the different flows. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So after that ayah, after it says, and they asked thee concerning the orphans, can we take the word orphan out and put in the word aberrated?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's look at this like an equation. Now, again, I'm not trying to change the ayat. I'm trying to use this as a tool to go deeper into the ayat. I'm trying to see if there's some harmonics here that we can look at. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next line says, say, to set right their affairs is good. Okay. Next step in the cycle of action. Let's set right their affairs. Well, what is that word in Arabic? And if we're using the word orphan and substituting in this equation the word aberrated, that would imply that to set right their affairs would have to be synonymous with processing, would it not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when Allah says he's given us a book explaining all things, he has, but we got to do the study. And that's a bold statement to make. I've given you a book explaining all things. Does that mean you've given me a book explaining calculus? It has to be. Have you given me a book explaining trigonometry? Has to be. Have you given me a book explaining quantum physics? Has to be. Otherwise, that ayat would be incorrect, right?
Yep.
So are you telling me that quantum physics is it in the Holy Quran?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Do you mean to tell me different levels of mathematics are in there? Yes, ma'am. Well, I don't see mathematics in there. It's because we have to look at the fact that perhaps it's written in the form of allegory. But in order to understand our Islam, we have to study our mathematics. But then to understand mathematics, we would have to study our Islam, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Okay, now you said earlier that there's a mathematical equivalent to every number. I mean, to every letter in the Arabic language, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know exactly how you figure it, but I went and I put a mathematical equivalent to Yatima. And I came up, it resolved to the number 7. And that's the question you went to in English, in English lesson C1, you went to question 7, number 7, which is a question, why does he like the devil? So is that how you got to that question? Because you put a mathematical equivalent to Yatima?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. So what you probably did was you took the Arabic letters and assigned them based on the English. Did you do based on like the English alphabet?
Yes,
Okay.
Yatima, the word Yatima, and I put number, for Y, a 25, and so forth and so on.
Okay.
And then I added it up, 2 plus 5 plus 1 plus 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 1, it resolves to a 7. It equals 16, which resolves to a 7.
Okay.
And that question, that the number that you went to in English lesson C1, number 7.
Okay, that's interesting. Every Arabic letter has a numerical value, but there's a different value.
Okay.
Because there's 29 letters in the Arabic language. God willing, we'll get into that at another time.
Okay. I was just
no, but see the wheels are turning, and that's good. We're getting the rust off the locks. That's fine. The value of the word Yatima is 450. Okay, which is where I was at the very beginning with 450 years. I'll find the ayah because I remember or the verse in the Bible. I read one where it says and they'll be lost in the land that's not theirs for 400 years. And then I believe I've read someplace else where it said they'll be lost in the land that's not theirs for 450. But let me get the actual facts on that. Okay. Anyway. So we're taking the word orphan. We're going to input the word aberrated. Because an aberrated person is aberrated based on what? Something that happened in their childhood, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we're using the word orphan and we're using this as a formula and we're inputting the word aberrated, then to set right their affairs, there should be something there that is equivalent to processing, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when Allah said, I've given you a book explaining all things, he has. It's just that each one of us, based on our level of study, for me, it's math and science. For Brother Wadud, it's a level of medicine and science. Sister Peggy was dealing with nursing, cardiac, was it cardiac nurse, Sister Peggy? If I remember correctly. You're on mute.
Yes, I was a cardiology nurse.
Okay, so
I worked in very different cardiology units.
Okay, so every one of us have our individual part of the ship that we bring to our Zoom meetings. Okay, but the thing is, Sister Peggy, with her knowledge of cardiology, we would be able to go into the Holy Quran and find aspects of cardiology. Correct? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you happen to look in the problem book, in problem book number 1, where it talks about the uncle of W. DeFraud, he lived in the wilderness of North America. He lived other than his own self. And we know based on that says his pulse beat at 78 beats per minute. This kid was 45 years of age. It just so happens, and this could be just a coincidence, but in the spirit of Mother Tana Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, and I say that very, well, you understand what I'm saying. If you take that 78 beats per minute, and it's problem number 1, add that 78 to the 1, you get 79, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the 79th surah, and you look at ayats number 7 and number 8, there's the 7 and the 8. If you have a Holy Quran handy, go to Surah 79 and read ayat number 7 and 8 and see if it relates to problem number 1. Anyone got that handy?
79, you say go to 79.
And then read ayat number 7 and number 8 and see if it relates back to problem number 1. Who's got it?
That's, you said 79, right?
Ayat, Surah 79, ayat number 7 and 8. Go ahead, Sister Peggy.
The consequence will follow it. Hearts that day will palpitate.
Okay, well, isn't that what the problem of the first uncle had? Yeah, problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go through the mathematics and we're relating the problem book mathematically to the Holy Quran and it's tying back, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to use mathematics in a way with the different ayats. Now, setting right their affairs, does that in the language of Arabic relate back to processing?
It does.
To set right their affairs in Arabic, the word is Salaha. Salaha. Okay, but remember in Arabic, there's 2 types of S's and there's 2 types of H's. Okay, here's what the word Salaha means. It means, now I'm gonna go through a whole list of the words in Arabic. I mean, the definitions. You pinpoint which words you've heard in book 1 or Science or Survival.
Brother Lukman, can you spell Salaha one more time?
Salaha. Okay. It means to put in order, to restore, to make peace, to reconcile, to reconstruct. Well, isn't that what we're doing when we go back into the time track and the event? Aren't we reconstructing the event?
Yes, sir.
We're locating the perceptics and we're reconstructing what color was the fridge? What room are you in? What do you see on the table? Remember, we're in the past, but we're speaking in present time, right? We don't say, what do you remember the refrigerator? No, what color is the refrigerator? Where are you standing in the room? Who is there, right?
Mhm.
It means to fix or repair. Doesn't the church have something called life repair?
Yes, sir.
Aren't they trying to set right your affairs when you go through life repair?
Yes, sir.
And
Right.
isn't it based on the orphan?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yeah, the wise men repaired the wall for the orphans.
And you know what? At another time, those 3 trials, when you clear them in Arabic, they're right in line with processing. We'll go through that at another time, Allah willing. But I was able to go and clear that by Allah's grace, and it lines up perfect. The word salaha means to remove. Well, don't we remove charge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. To bring about agreement. Right? To be improved. To be corrected. Now, so to set right the affairs, aren't all those words in agreement to what we do during processing? Isn't that what processing is all about?
Yes, sir.
The auditor is making right the affairs of the pre-clear, who really, if you're going back on the time track, you're going back to the pre-clear's childhood, right?
Yes, sir.
Where they satisfy the characteristics based on the Arabic word for orphan, yatima, that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, they were an orphan, either physically, mentally, or emotionally, yes?
Yes, sir.
We are, as the auditor, we are striving to make right the affair. We're trying to fix something. We're reconstructing the event so we can get back as many perceptics as possible. Because the more real we can make this situation, what takes place, that individual will go back through and relive that event. And that's how we bring the ACTH up to the surface. In Dinex, he does use the word twice in book 1, but he uses the word charge. We're bringing all the charge to the surface. And then we want what? We want a release of the charge. We're getting the charge out. And then when we keep recounting the situation, what's taking place? Eventually, we have reconstructed the memory. We have removed the charge and we've done that. Now we have refiled the memory in the standard memory banks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then last but not least, it says this. It says, and if you mix with them, they are your brethren. Okay. So now when we look at the word mix, the word mix is, let's see if I got it right here. In order, if you mixed with them, and it says if you mix with them, oh no, excuse me, to set right their affairs is good. Okay. Now,
Wait, so what do you want us to write down?
okay, so for orphan, that's the aberrated person.
Mhm.
To set right their affairs, that's the word salaha. That's telling us, that's showing us that word salaha is describing the processing. Where you look at is good. To set right their affairs is good. Is good in Arabic, the word is khayrun. K-H-A-Y-R. Oh, no, excuse me. The root word is khaira. K-H-A-Y-R-A. It means to allow someone to make a choice. In other words, there's two things that take place with the tech. To set right their affairs is good could mean that we are taking the time as auditors to set right the affairs of someone who's aberrated and taking them through the steps of processing. But it also means that we're allowing someone to make a choice. We're saying, look, we have the tech that we can use to set right the affair. We can help you in that which happened in your childhood. But so now we're presenting this and allowing you to make the choice. Does that make any sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but there's no compulsion in religion. We can't force you to be processed. The minister gave us the instructions to study the tech. We strive to study the tech. We can offer it to people. So there's some people who are going to accept the help, and there's some who are not. But we are present by Allah's grace as the auditors to set right the affairs. We're giving you a choice. Remember a wall with a door in it?
Yes.
Okay. But no one can force you to be processed. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Brother Lukman, the minister, is the actual door who's leading us to a door.
Thank you, sister. Yes, ma'am. And here's something interesting. This came up when I was studying, but you already hit on it. Remember when the minister said, a safe full of riches, but we lost the combination?
Yes, sir.
As I was studying, I said, is the safe full of riches the same thing as the wall where the treasure is buried?
You did. Yes, sir.
That's what came to mind as I'm studying. So the wall with the treasure, and I don't have the time, the wall with the treasure is connected to the safe full of riches that we lost the combination to, but that'll be another time. Okay. So does all of this line up? Is all this line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then finally, he says, and if you mix with them, they are your brethren. So now, how is the word mixed with your brethren connected with the orphan and the processing? The word for mix is Khala, kalala. And it means to be on intimate terms. It means to be in association with or in the company of someone, but it also means, in different derivations of the Arabic word, it also means insanity, mental disorder, confusion, or stricken with a certain level of disease. So this word, as far as being associated with on intimate terms, would that not describe two people sitting face to face going through an event or incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it also described the mental state of one of the people that are being spoken to. Insanity, confused, mental disorder, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when we go back and look at this verse, and they asked concerning the orphans, we input the word aberrated. So we asked about the aberrated. To set right their affairs is good, meaning not only to give them processing, but to give them the option of being processed. And if you mix with them, they are your brethren. So if I take the time to speak with this person on an intimate level, they become like family, because now we're sharing intimate details, right? So the brethren here is kind of like the auditor's code, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, brethren, in the sense of where you sit on the tone scale, perhaps.
Okay.
And also,
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying affinity, ARC as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Most definitely. And if I was to pull up that word brethren real quick, everyone would probably be correct. But Brother Ahmad, go a little deeper into that thought.
Yes, sir. It wasn't very developed, but I'll share what I had. So when you were speaking, the mix part, when you mix with them, when you were depicting two sitting together, that's the mixing.
Okay,
right?
yes.
Because you are providing that direction with
Mhm.
auditing. And so to interpret mix in that way. And then also, if you mix solution comes together, Kool-Aid and water turns into, and sugar turns into a drink, right?
Mhm.
And similar mixing, because also I'm closing with this, trying to mixing would be, the delivery of the service,
Mhm.
mixing the minds, mixing the tones.
Mhm.
And then by the end of that, long term, that person's tone will be raised. They might become an auditor. So
Mhm.
that was a little more on that. I hope it's helpful.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
Brother Lukman, and from what Brother Ahmad just said, it made me think, because this is where I'm at in my study, differentiate as opposed to identification. When you on the differentiate level, on the level of differentiation, that's a rational level. And in order to mix, you have to differentiate what you're putting in the drink, like he said, the water, the sugar, the Kool-Aid, differentiate. But identification is irrational. That's an irrational level, which is A equals A equals A equals A. So it's either all sugar, all water, or all Kool-Aid. Yeah, that's what I thought of when Brother Ahmad said what he said.
So, do you know what the word differentiate is in Arabic?
What is that? Discrimination, right?
Right, but what is the Arabic word for that?
Farkan, right?
Farkan.
Farkan. Farkan.
So can we see in this ayat something that will show us the equivalent of the importance for processing?
Oh, yes, sir.
It
Yes,
says,
sir.
and Allah knows him who makes mischief from him who sets right. And if Allah pleased, he would have made matters difficult for you. Surely he is mighty wise. It's almost as if Allah is saying, look, I'm going to give you something that's going to help you deal with what you're suffering from. I know him who makes mischief from him who sets it right. If Allah pleased, he would have made matters difficult. But it's almost like he's saying, but if he pleased, he can also make things easier for you. But it boils down to whether or not we choose to take the medicine, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So that's just a small little snippet of something I was blessed to come across while I was studying. And as soon as I'm blessed to find something, because I always go back to Surah 96, 96, the clot. It says Allah teaches man by the pen what man knew not. The word ikra, it means more than read. The word ikra means to study intensely, to examine thoroughly. So read, in the sense of English, we just read a book, is not the same read that's in the Holy Quran. Reading, the best example I could use, or one of the best examples, is how when you read Brother Jabril's articles and he breaks things down and breaks things down and breaks things down, that's Ikra. That's Ikra. That's reading for real. That's, we don't want to just read superficially. We want to read with purpose, with intensity, and thoroughly. And when you read any of Brother Jabril's articles, he takes a word and he breaks it down to the quantum level. Okay. So Minister describes Brother Jabril as that angel who says Ikra. That's for real. That's for real. That's why on the cover of the Janaza, it was what? It was the pen, right?
Yes.
Reading and writing. And those are the two elements you'll see in the picture of the Savior. He's got the Holy Quran and you see the pen in his pocket. Read and write.
Oh, wow.
Read and write.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Oh, praise is due to Allah. Brother, you just spoke to what I had studied today, what I came with based on what was being said last night again. And I thank Sister Ania. Thank you, Sister Ania, for for letting me know, for sending me a text message and helping me to get on, last night. I was about an hour or so late, but where I came in, the believers were discussing, basically that some listen and use the tech and some don't, for whatever reason that they don't. So it made me think about what's in the Holy Quran, verse 48. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Am I going in and out?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Verse 48, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and guard yourselves against the day when no soul will avail another in the least, neither will intercession be accepted on its behalf, nor will compensation be taken from it, nor will they be helped. And Brother Lukman, one of the things I was going to ask you, keep this in mind, what is the Arabic for intercession? But intercession, it reminded me of what the auditors do. Because intercession, it means, this is my little English stuff. Intercession means the act of interceding. And to intercede means to intervene between parties with a view to reconciling differences, mediate, which means occupying a middle position. And that's what auditors do. They occupy a middle position with a view, to reconcile. And that's one of the words you gave us, Brother Lukman, just a little while ago, regarding the orphan. And the auditor reconciles. The auditor is in a middle position between the pre-clear and the ingrain, to reconcile from insanity to sanity, from irrationality to being rational, from living in the past to living in present time. So the Holy Quran says that there's going to come a time when no intercession will avail. And avail means to be of use or advantage, to serve. That's what the auditors do. The auditors serve. It also means to produce or result in a benefit or advantage, gain. That's what the pre-clear gets. The pre-clear gets gain when they're being audited or processed, So this verse, it tells me that, and guard yourselves against a day when no soul will avail another. No soul will ever be able to give another gain. It says the day will come. So this suggests that we're living in a day where we can serve one another. We can give one another gain in our aberration, in our insanity. But the day is going to come when we're not going to be able to do that, So to take advantage of the instruction that the minister gave and to study this technology, get audited, process yourself, process others. This is the time to do that. And from your mathematics dealing with our Savior has arrived, pages, I think it's 181 to 183. If
80,
I'm
81.
81, I'm sorry, 81 to 83, right?
So if
Okay.
we have no internet and we have no cell phones, how would we be able to process one another? How could we straight wire one another? So the day might come when they can control the Zoom meeting, they can control the internet, they control the cell phone, so we can't communicate like this.
And so that's why we have to get this for ourselves so that we can work on ourselves. Because the minister said Allah is his auditor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Allah is our auditor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't get to a Sister Angela or a brother Lukman or other auditors who are out there. If we can't get to them, we have to be able to do this for ourselves. Even now, we have to be able to do this for ourselves because certified auditors are not always available. But guess what? Allah is always available.
That's right.
You know, I'm always available to me as long as I got my right mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So that's why hearing and obeying the minister in regards to if we're not going to be an auditor, get this, take the Dianetics course, you know, and that will make you want to take the other courses like Science of Survival and Self-Analysis and Handbook for Pre-Clears. That's what it's doing for me. So I'm learning. And by learning this technology, I just studied in Science of Survival. I have to even watch out for certain auditors whose tone is low.
That's right.
Because if they're at a 2.0 and below,
they can't audit.
I can't audit me because they can do more damage. They can. I know L. Ron Hubbard said in book 1, a little bit of auditing is, even if it's not from somebody who really know what they're doing, I'm paraphrasing, but Sister Angela know and others know what I'm saying. I would imagine it's good. It does, you know, it's good. In Science of Survival, he's talking about how it can do some damage if that auditor is low on the tone scale in a particular case. I can go and find it and read it if you'd like. But yes, sir. You know what I'm talking about, Brother Lukman, right?
I know exactly, because when you go through Science of Survival, in one of the columns, it shows you in order to audit someone at this level on the tone scale, you yourself have to be on a certain level on the tone scale.
Right.
Let's say someone's at a 1.0 or a 0.5. Okay. If my tone level is not high enough and I start auditing you, let's say you're at 0.5, then I get frustrated and I invalidate you at a 0.5. Are you going to go up the tone scale? Or are you going to go down the tone scale?
I'll
might blow it.
You might blow it. So you're going to drop below 0.5. Why? Because
that's psychotic. That's in the psychotic realm. 0.
So my invalidation during auditing, matter of fact, the exact process is this. He says it's column AQ. What's the tone level of auditor necessary to handle a case? Someone who is at a level of 0.5, that auditor has to be 3.5 or above. So he showed you wherever they are on the tone scale, here's where you need to be. Because if you can't, in the SRD, they call it handling originations. And you begin to handle certain reactions from the person, they might say certain things. Like, for example, when you're going through SRD, you have to go through what's called your TRs. And one of the things that your twin will do, will say certain things to either make you laugh or piss you off. And if you react a certain way in an actual auditing session, you could cause an invalidation in the pre-clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So during the SRD, you're doing your TRs, you're being trained on how to handle these originations where a person can come out of their face and say certain things, and you just keep it with a straight face and you don't let it affect you. They can come right out and say, like, for example, I had my twin. It was a brother named, I won't use his name, but it was a brother who I was working with, good Muslim brother. and we have a real great relationship. And during the time we're going through the thing, he looked at me, he goes, "Kiss me." And I busted out. I couldn't keep a straight face. I'm seeing this brother look at me, says, "Kiss me." And so what happens, it produced a reaction, and I started laughing. I cracked up. And then as soon as I said that, the Scientologist said, "Fail." I failed. You got to be able to handle certain things. And then at one point he says, "You know what, why are you talking so much?" And you got to be able to handle that without getting emotional.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
why is that necessary? Did not the minister say a day will come when someone will spit in your face and you won't be able to react to it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have to be able to handle the originations of other people. We might be
Yes,
on the street, and if you look, you have what's called you have our restrictive law, and then you have the general rules of conduct, correct?
yes, sir.
One of them is be kind and do good to all. I've seen that someplace, but there's also one that says do not provoke people, I think it is. I might have to go back
Ye-
and read through it. But the thing is, if you're on the street right now and someone comes at you, and I'll give you an example based on experience. And it's funny because about a week before this happened, I said, I'm going to use this one day. Something I learned in the tech. We had stopped the fire engine, and we have to back into the firehouse. So we have to cross across the other lanes of traffic. We crossed along the other lanes of traffic, and there was a car that had stopped that was about to go around. And the sister was angry. And I said, I know what I'm about to do. So I get out the engine, I walk up to the car. I said, roll down your window. She goes, how am I supposed to know what you're doing? You just pulled across. I said, sister, I said, how, if I had not stopped your car, how could I meet someone who is as remarkable as you are?
Hmm.
She looked at me, she looked down, and she just smirked and smiled, and that's how it ended. I said, have a good day, sister. She said, you too. And she pulled away.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point. We have to be able to take people when we meet them. And we can't meet them on the frequency of anger they're at. We got to meet them up here. The minister said we have to be super. Do you remember he said we had to be supernatural?
Yes, yes, sir. I remember.
We got to meet that person and bring them up. And we have to find different ways to bring a person's tone up, because the person you cuss out is the same person that might get out the car, walk up to your car, and put 3 shots into the window. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
People are so aberrated in this day and time, they're already on edge. And by saying or doing the wrong thing, we could be provoking that wrath onto ourselves, versus if we could be the one voice of reason in an environment of insanity. Someone comes up and says something to us in a negative sense, maybe we just have to rehearse. And this is what the SRD does. It gives you a whole list of things that come up during processing, and they will take you through each and every one until they call it flattening the comm line, flattening the communication. A person can say certain things and it doesn't generate a response. It doesn't generate a response. You can react to it. You're still maintaining ARC and you still continue the processing, but you don't allow that person to push your button, correct?
Yes, sir. That's bull baiting. Is that the bull baiting?
That's
Bull
kind of
baiting?
that's called bull baiting. Really what it is you're working with your twin and you're purposely trying to push buttons to get them to either react with anger or laughter. You're trying to get a response, but the more you do it, you flatten the response so they can say the certain things, and it doesn't affect you anymore. You can look at the person, you can take what they said, and then you keep it moving. And I'll say this last part, and then we'll start to wrap it up. But when we went to Flag, Brother Abdul Malik Saeed, the way he dropped this science was incredible. He talked about in our lessons, what is the reward? When you look at the lesson, let's read it real quick, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Get the actual facts. Supreme Wisdom is a book of fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
He said, go ahead, Sister Tina.
I said, where are we reading?
We're going to Lost Found Muslim lesson number 1, question number 10. And then this is where we'll wrap it up at. It talks about why does Muhammad and a Muslim murder the devil? Okay. Now, remember, devil, if we clear the word devil using our supreme wisdom, the word devil is that which makes a person weak or wicked, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the cycle of action, the start, change, stop, would be a person is weak, become wicked, they become devil. We see that start, change, stop. Weak, wicked, devil. Yes.
Okay, weak, wicked devil. Yes.
Okay. The word weak in Arabic is daufa, and the word daufa also means attenuated, which is a term I know you've come across in science of survival, Sister Tina. And attenuation.
Yes, 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 yes.
So now if you look at question number 10, it says, what is the duty of each Muslim in regards to 4 devils? Sister Tina, you got your science of survival handy?
Yes, I do.
Can you turn to page 349 real quick?
349. Uh-oh. Okay, 349. 381. Okay, 349.
And who has message to the black man handy? Other than Sister Tina, who has message to the black man at hand? Sister Peggy, can you turn to page 28?
Oh, I pulled up the wrong book. You say 349, Brother Lukman?
Yes, ma'am. Science of Survival, page 349. It's gonna be the chapter dealing with locks. Book 2, chapter 10 on locks.
Okay, 349. It's way up there. Okay, 349. Okay, I'm there.
Okay, now, how many devils do we have to murder? According to number 10. 4 devils.
One time.
4 at one time, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now a devil is something that makes a person weak or wicked, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Read the first 2 sentences of page 349.
Okay, it says, elsewhere we have the anatomy of N theta. N theta could be said to be in 4 forms.
Okay, so there's 4 forms of N theta. Our lessons say 4 devils, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And here's what Brother Abdul Malik said at our meeting. When you talk about he said, if you notice, it says a button to wear on the lapel of our coat. He said, not a pin. He said a button. And if you clear the word button in the dictionary, here's what the word button means. One of the meanings for button is a hidden sensitivity that can be manipulated to produce a desired response. So when he said we have a button that we wear on the lapel of our coat, it means all my buttons are exposed. They're exposed. You can't push my buttons anymore. That's the way he dropped it at Flag.
All right.
Okay. So it says, if you notice, it doesn't say just bring. It says bring and present 4 devils at one time, doesn't it? Does it not?
Yes, sir.
And by bringing in, because all of us come to the Zoom meeting, did we bring our devils with us?
Yes, sir.
But did we present our devils?
No, sir.
But when we go through auditing, we bring our devils and we present our devils, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if we bring and present our devils all at the same time, what is the reward? The reward is we get a button to wear on the lapel of our coat, meaning in the lapel is on the outside near the heart, yes?
Yes, sir.
So by going through auditing, we're bringing and presenting our devils at one time, And now my buttons are all exposed, meaning you can't push my buttons. There's no emotional response anymore. You can say and do whatever you want. Look at the minister, how he handled, again, I'm always going over this point. When you look at how the minister handles individuals when he does his interviews, some of us, we might have reacted in such a way to cuss a person out, and that would have ended the interview. And they said, look, he's reacting all emotional. The minister handled everyone that came across him. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Can we say that his button is on the lapel of his coat, meaning he doesn't, you can't push his buttons, correct?
That's right.
Okay. That is something that takes place during the SRD, which is on the journey to go to clear. You and I have to first find out what are our buttons. You know, what is it that someone can say or do to us that'll cause us to be other than our own self? You know, savage means a person that's lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life, right?
Yes, sir.
Lost a knowledge of self is the same as being out of valence, and living a beast life is the same as aberrated. Is there something I could say to you, Sister Peggy, that would make you come out of character? You're on mute.
I was just thinking of it. I can't think of anything right now.
Okay.
Maybe if you said something about my parents, I might come out.
Okay. But have you noticed that sometimes have you noticed this? Let me just say this one point and then I'll shut up, I promise. There is a scene, you know, I'm big on movies. There's a scene from what was the movie? It was the movie with Morgan Freeman, and the one guy in it had to build an ark.
Oh, I saw that.
Okay. Morgan Freeman said this line. He says,
Oh,
I'm going to paraphrase it. When a person asks for patience, does God make them patient, or does he put them in situations where they have to learn to be patient?
Yeah, puts them in situations.
When a person asks God for courage, does he give them courage, or does he put them in situations where they have to be courageous?
Puts them in situations.
Okay. So if Allah was going to teach us as young representations of Adam, if he were to teach us if he were to teach us the 99 attributes, for example, Sister Peggy, would he give you patience, or would he give you situations where you had to learn to become patient?
he would give me situations where I had to learn to be patient.
Right. Which would imply he wouldn't put you in a situation with something that you already mastered. He'd put you in a situation where you had to learn something about yourself, correct?
Sure.
So if we were all to look at the 99 attributes, choose the one that gives us, you and I, the most trouble. 9 times out of 10, that's where Allah tests us a lot. And he tests us in that attribute, not to hurt us, but to show us where our button is. What is, so whoever wants to just share this real quick, what is something that you have issue with that you're willing to share with regards to what someone says or does that kind of sets you off?
I'll share.
Go ahead, Sister Tina.
But it just happened recently.
Okay.
If I ask a question and I ask the question more than once, and instead of that person listening to me and just answering my question, they get smart with me and get antagonistic. You know? Yeah.
So use a word to describe how you would react.
I got irritated.
Okay.
I got irritated and annoyed.
Okay.
I was irritated and annoyed. I had to talk myself down.
Okay.
And I had to thank Allah for that person because I saw something in me that I hadn't seen in a while.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a spot. Yes, it was a blemish. It was a blemish there on me.
So could we say the opposite of irritated or annoyed would be peace.
Yes.
Okay, so in order for Allah to teach you the attribute of as-salam, he's not going to give you peace. He's going to put you in a situation where you had to learn to be peaceful, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
In order for us to learn the attributes of Allah, because he taught Adam all the names, right?
Yes, sir.
Then in teaching Adam all the names, Adam gained mastery over the angels, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then I think I've heard the minister say this, that this dialogue between God and the angels is a process that takes place within us, correct?
Yes.
I got to find out where he said. I think it's in the study guides. But God talking to the angels is a process that takes place within ourselves. So what if Allah, in order for Allah to teach Sister Tina the 99 attributes, step by step, every trial you go through is really a situation that's designed for you to manifest that attribute, then we realize that all the trials we're going through, it is Allah teaching us the 99 attributes so we can gain mastery over the angels or the forces of nature within ourselves. And then that is how we grow into God. Is it, can we go along those lines?
Makes sense. Yes, sir.
So then can we say that processing is a part of the process of becoming God?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Just so we'll go on that. Sister Tina, we'll let you have the last word if no one else has anything else, and then we will wrap it up.
Oh, I didn't put my hand down. I'm
Okay.
fine. Somebody else can say something.
You want to say something?
Oh, yeah. Message to the Black man. Somewhere on that page, I can't think of where it's on that page, but if you look on page 28, the Most High Elijah Muhammad said that everything in its infancy has trouble. Do you see that anywhere?
So God himself intervenes to make manifest the two peoples. Everything that is of good according to recorded history has trouble in its infancy, but as it grows, it triumphs in the end.
Okay, now, Sister Tina, I need you to read one last thing on page 349.
Yes, sir.
Go down to the second paragraph. You're going to see, do you see where it says all things begin?
Second paragraph, all things begin. The second paragraph, it starts with theta.
Yes. So if you go down 1, 2, 3, if you go down 4 lines, you'll see where it says harmonious level.
Yes, yes.
Read that next sentence. All things begin.
All things begin with a heavy impact and in turbulence. If anything is to be learned by theta about mess.
Now, isn't that kind of the same thing that Sister Peggy
About
just same thing, just different language, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
You see that, Sister Peggy? Okay. We're saying the same thing.
Yeah, trials.
Just using different language. Everything in its infancy. So Most High Elijah Muhammad said it in a way that, from our standpoint, that was the wake-up message. He had to say it in a way that everyone would understand it, right?
Yes, sir.
So he put the language, he put what the Savior gave him in the language that he knew. He put it in his language, but his language is designed to get all of us, right, as a wake-up message.
Yes, sir.
So if L. Ron Hubbard is saying the same thing that the Most High Elijah Muhammad is saying, is it that the Most High Elijah Muhammad got it from L. Ron Hubbard? Did L. Ron Hubbard get it from the Most High Elijah Muhammad? Or does this represent an eternal truth?
An eternal truth.
An eternal truth. And it's just given to us in 2 different ways, in 2 different languages. But the Most High Elijah Muhammad and L. Ron Hubbard are really saying the same exact thing, they're saying it differently. And
yes, sir. But
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to say something to what you just said after you finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead before you lose the thought.
No, what you just said, it made me think of, okay, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he taught us, but he commissioned the minister to put it in his fine language so that we can understand. The minister would look up every word of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to do his lecture. And after a while, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him he didn't have to do that anymore. Allah will just speak. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. The minister gives us the meaning of what he taught. And this is what I'm seeing, we are to study in order to perform, to be that which he is teaching, that which the meaning is. We are to be that as the example to our people, in order to teach our people, because our people, they're gonna want to see love, they're gonna want to see kindness. They don't want to hear it, they want to see it. So that's what I got out of what you just said, because that's something that I had came across my mind during my studies some time ago, and what you just said just brought it to my mind.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Sister Peggy said the minister helps us navigate the narrative. That's one way of looking at it. So your assignment, if you desire to take it, like Mission Impossible, your assignment, if you wish to take it, challenge yourself. Maybe just start with Lost Farm Muslim lesson number 1. Why is the devil selling the best part of the planet Earth? Do word clearing on that, and see if you do not find ARC between some of your definitions and some of the terminology that's used in the text. See, here's the thing: we have to grow up. Not we here, but just generally speaking. In our lessons where it says, what is meant by the laborer's answers to all lessons in the past, present, and future being perfect is that we must know and be able to prove at all times to the new converts that the lessons that our Savior Allah gave us to study and learn is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all the former prophets. And then he says, concerning the beginning of the devils, and he gives us a whole list. Let me just touch on this real briefly, and then we'll end this. Go ahead, Brother Wadu.
Yes, sir. Very briefly, and it took me a moment to decide to try to ask this the group. A problem for me has been since coming into the ranks that in striving to be a better me and a better person, and then at a certain point, if anyone can remember, there was that slogan, "What would Jesus do?" WWJD was everywhere, and then we were instructed in FOI to think of how the minister, the Jesus, would respond or react. So what has troubled me, what pushes my own button, would be when I see another, or when I perceive another believer not presenting themselves as a believer, meaning as I'm striving to try to be the best believer that I can, if I were in a session of auditing and being the type of individual that I am, I live in my head a lot, figuring things out. If I perceived that the other person across from me were coming foul, so to speak, or coming other than themselves, that would be more of a trigger for me than an aid to me. So I'm wrestling with that dynamic that I've seen a lot of times where believers, I should say, may not always present themselves as someone that is a believer in this, striving to be right at all times. So how do I combat that?
Well, here's the thought that comes to mind, brother, as you're saying that. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said some people are like sandpaper and some people are like wood. He said that if the wood could talk, it would tell you how uncomfortable the sandpaper is. He says, but over time, the sandpaper will lose its grit and it will smooth out the rough edges of the wood, and then the sandpaper is discarded. That to me is a demo kit saying that Allah will put certain people in our lives to be a pain in our backside. But the purpose of that is their job is to smooth out our rough edges, and they help to bring out better character in us. And eventually it'll get to a point where their behavior won't even affect you anymore.
Say that, Brother Lukman.
We're being processed. I look at it like this: we're being processed or bull baited by the God himself, not to destroy us, but to make us better. We want to become God. Like the minister said, we want the crown, but we don't want to carry the cross. Every person want to go to heaven, but they don't want to go through hell to get there, correct?
Yes,
Right.
sir. I heard that.
Just realize that person is in your life. Allah put that person there to make you better. It's a hard pill to swallow, brother. Because the first thought in your mind is you just want to get at that person. But realize, just go back what the minister said. Some people like sandpaper and some people like wood. Now I'm gonna say this in the language of an agricultural scientist by the name of Brother Ahmad. I'm gonna say it in this language. Brother Ahmad, can I pick your brain for a split second?
Yes, sir, since you've piqued it so well today.
By Allah's grace. This is a demo kit. Brother, what can you, and I've asked you this question before, what can you use that makes crops grow better and produce better fruit? What is something you can use to make things grow better?
The first thing that comes to my mind is compost.
And what's in the compost?
Well, it's decomposed organic matter that comes from a bunch of different places.
And what's one place that's real funky that might be a part of it?
Cow manure or whatever,
Nowhere.
livestock manure.
Nowhere. So are you telling me that sometimes you have to use manure and it makes something grow better?
Absolutely.
So in other words, sometimes you got to have some funky people around to bring the best out of you. Could we use that as a demo kit?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very valuable. A practical lesson I've been learning the last about 2 years. I think I got it this year, so I'm hoping it'll change.
So I'm gonna use the clean version of the word. I'll use the word crap, but you understand the word I'm using, okay? Crappy people are placed around us so that we can become better in character. Crappy people are character builders. Thank God for crappy people. My father used to call them shitheads. Excuse my language, but that's the word my father used to use talked about people. So sometimes, go ahead, brother Wadu.
Just as a quick follow-up. Now, if that, knowing that there's an auditor's code, and feeling that I don't know everything, but I feel like I have a pretty good perception on things. And so if I see my auditor, or if in that moment I'm with an auditor that violates that code, but still in myself wanting to be a brother and not get them in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
but
sir.
Yet that the code that they violated violates me.
Mm-hmm.
So now how do I respond outside of feeling like I need to, okay, they want to violate that code. Well, I know some things that could push their buttons and violate them as well. But then now I'm not, as I said earlier, responding like Jesus would.
Okay. Here's how you respond like Jesus, brother. Here's how the minister answered that question before. Our general orders say report all violations of orders I'm instructed to enforce, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who's the first person you reported to? Does anyone have the answer to that? When you report a
The
violation,
the person.
report it to the person first. That's the mercy. Report it to the person. Give them a chance to fix the situation. And I've heard the minister also say that if you make a mistake in private, it gets corrected in private. But if you make it public, it gets corrected in public. That's how I handle things at the firehouse. If you do something privately, I don't try to expose you in front of everyone. I'll pull you aside and say, look, you did this. You shouldn't have done that. Do it this way. But if you make your mistake publicly, I have to correct you publicly. Okay. But I'm answering your question based on what I've heard the minister say. The first you report that the first person you report to is you report. Don't go report it to everyone else. Pull that brother aside and say, look, brother, all due respect, this is brotherhood, and word it any way you want to, but based on the minister's words, deal with that individual first, report the violation of the instruction to him. Then if he continues, then you got to go up the chain. In the military, Sister Peggy will tell you there's a chain of command, and then you have to go up the chain. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
If we could just fall back on what the minister said, then we'll be all right.
There you go.
Excellent.
Praise due to Allah. Last but not least, here's an assignment, and this is something I'm currently working on. And if you choose to work on it, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of gain out of it. But in our lessons, it says that the lesson that we have of the fulfillment, correct?
What?
It says, I read it verbatim. What is meant by this is rule number 3, 13 rules of instruction. What is meant by the laborer's answers to all lessons in the past, present, and future being perfect is that we must know and be able to prove at all times to the new converts that the lessons that our Savior Allah gave us to study and learn is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all the former prophets. Then he goes into a list of different things. I just want to deal with one thing. Of all the former prophets concerning the beginning of the devils. I want to stop right there. Here's something that you can do that you're going to find very, very interesting. And I'm gonna end it on a clip with the minister, and that's why we'll end it. If you were to write a list of all the former prophets, okay, that means write down the list of all the former prophets. That means you have to write down a list of all the former religions, and you have to write down a list of all the scriptures that those prophets declared. Does that make sense? So, for example, if we said Islam, you say Prophet Muhammad, you say Holy Quran, right? If you say Bible, if you're talking about Jesus, you're talking about New Testament. Talking about Musa, you're talking about Old Testament, correct? So just make a list of some religions. You have the Moor Science Temple that was given to us through the Honorable Noble Drew Ali, and you have what's called the Circle 7 Quran, okay? You have what's called Buddha, you have Buddhism, and you have a book called the Dhammapada. You have a book, you have Hinduism, and that's an ancient, they don't have any singular prophet, but one of the books is called the Bhagavad Gita. Now you just make a list of the prophets, make a list of the scriptures, and just Google, find out what does each religion say about the devil. If you go into Shintoism, you'll see a lot of similarities between Shintoism and Islam. Because remember, who was the first people that came out of the grafting process? That was a brown man, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The brown man was who? Or is
Japanese.
Now, Shintoism is specifically a Japanese religion, even though it's different parts of the world. The source and origin is in Japan. And if you read about Shintoism talks about a universal spirit, and it also talks about the child spirit, and the child spirit is in you and I, and the child spirit's job is to evolve back to the universal spirit. Well, that's the same thing as Theta Mess. It's the same thing as the Ruh and the Nafs of Islam. There's a lot of similarities. And
so you say what they say about the devil?
Right. Look at the different religions and look at how they describe devil. And what you will find is, and if you look at Zoroastrianism, which is considered the oldest revealed religion, and you look at Zoroaster, you'll see something about God, but you'll see something called good mind and bad mind. If you go into the Metu Neter of the ancient Kemetic spiritual schools of spirituality, you'll talk about Osiris, and you look at what's called Set, left brain and right brain. The point of what I'm trying to say is, if you look at the different religions and you look past the symbolism, you will see in this, here's the foundation of this. The foundation of this statement comes from Satan and the Mastery of the Sexual Urges, a lecture given by Minister Farrakhan. He said this, he says that what God has done with scripture is he has put dramas in the scripture with characters and names. And these dramas represent processes that are taking place within us. In other words, when we read scripture, we are reading the internal dynamics of what's going on in ourselves in a demo kit in the language of a scripture or a story in the Bible. Does that make sense? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. When you look at the other religions, you look at the Baha'i, and you look at their book called the Kitabi Akdas, and you look at in Taoism, and you look at the Tao Te Ching, you look at Shintoism, and their book is called the Kojiki, and you look at Buddhism, and the Dhammapada, and the Hindu, and the Bhagavad Gita. When you read all these different religious books, you're being shown the different aspects of the war that's taking place within the mind of self. It's just given in different language and symbolism. If we know those things, then we can show that our lessons is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all the former prophets. Does that, you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If we take the time
Yes, sir.
if we take the time just to learn a little bit about other religions, we'll see everyone is saying just about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just using different symbolism, different language, different rituals. Okay. And by understanding our lessons, we will know the formulae that puts all the religions in ARC together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I'm gonna end this on a quote on the minister's words. I think that'd be a good place to land this plane. Let me see if I can find it. It should be right here. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Give me 1 second. Let me get this out the way. It's up. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're going to use the minister's words to kind of land the plane.
When Prophet Muhammad sat down with Christians, he didn't talk to them out of the Quran. He didn't judge them out of the Quran. He judged them out of the revelation that they claimed they believed in. When he sat with the Jews, he judged them out of the Torah, not out of the Quran. So he couldn't judge them out of a book that he knew nothing about. He had to know the Torah, he had to know the gospel as well as the Quran. And when you live in the society of people that we live in today, you just can't study the Quran and not study the Torah or study the gospel. You have to know all the books that the people believe in so that you can bring them from the known to the unknown. And that's why Brother Farrakhan is very successful in talking to people of all faiths. Because I believe that I understand a little better than the narrowness of those of us who fall in love with our rituals and don't understand the truth that undergird the ritual and think that we got a different religion because the rituals are different. So I want to look at this who you are from the Quran, because when I get finished tonight, which won't be long from now, I want you to see your ability to overcome anything that is in your path. Now, you are black people, and I said Jesus was your brother.
All right, family. I think that's a good place to put a pin in this. First and foremost, oh wow, Sister Denise, we didn't hear nothing from Sister Denise. Are you there, Sister Denise? Maybe she's away from the computer. Well, if no one has anything else, thank you for your time and your patience. And I pray a lot that you got something from tonight. And as always, I look forward for us coming together again. And I don't know what this next assignment is going to be, but Allah is the captain of the ship. So I'm sure it'll be something that we all need. So with that being said and done, all praise is due to Allah for everything that came forth. If I made any mistakes, please forgive me. And let us go ahead and close it out in prayer. Attention prayer. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of the world, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Master of the day of judgment, which we now live, the alone we serve, thine aid do we seek. Please Allah guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors. Not the path upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after hearing thy teaching. Ameen.
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 Assalamu alaikum, family. I pray Allah that we got some case game tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.